Good evening and welcome once again to Kingdom Living Institute here at Life Changers Global Ministries. We thank God each week for our pastor, none other than Apostle Dr. Earl Newton. He makes this time available to our Kingdom Living Institute that we may come to you with a different lesson, a different study each week, and our First Lady, Lady Newton, and we thank God for them. Once again, as those of you that were with us last week, we have the pleasure of having Lady Jazz with us tonight, and she's going to come and give her presentation. We asked her to come for 2 weeks, and she so graciously did. And I know as a wife, as a mother, and also as a young lady that works and has a profession, that she takes time out to share and hopefully give you some pointers, give you some insight on how to deal with your children in today's setting. I've sat here and I've learned from her, and thank God for her. And so without delaying the time, we're going to ask her to come and sit, and she's going to lead us in prayer tonight, and we're going to turn it over to her.
Amen. Bless you all. Bless you all for being in the building today. I'm excited to be here. Y'all pray for me. Pray my strength, y'all. I just got off work. That's why I was a little late. So appreciate you all holding down the fort and allowing me to be here again. I give honors to Dr. Earl Newton and First Lady Ayetta Newton for allowing this opportunity. Thank God for my husband as well, Kevin DeVoe Griffin Sr. I appreciate him, all of my family from FIC, and those that are watching and joining and tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you in this building today. All right, let's go before the throne of grace at this time. God, we thank you for another opportunity to come together in your house. God, I pray right now that you will just give us the ears and the heart to hear what it is that you will have for me to speak to your people. God, move me out of the way so that you can have your way. Help me to decrease so that you may be able to increase. God, allow this session to be empowering and impactful to not just the youth, but to the teachers and to the leaders and to any and everybody that comes in contact with our children. God, we thank you for another opportunity, and we bless your name in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, y'all. I have been talking all day. So I'm going to look for y'all to talk a little bit back to me today, okay? It has been a glorious day. So many of you that joined us last time, I'm excited. We were able to kind of talk a little bit about, mental health and our youth. And hopefully, I think I spoke a little bit more to parents that day. And so we're going to kind of focus a little bit more on the youth this time, but also hopeful that parents and adults can also engage in this session as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. Those of you that have been a part of these sessions, you already know what I like to do when it comes down to myths and facts. And so I'm going to test you all again, see how much knowledge you all have kind of held on to from some of these previous sessions. So let's see. All right, my first question, and this is raise your hand if you believe this to be facts, okay? So let's test it out. If you believe something is a fact, raise your hand. Just raise your hand, just testing. Okay. All right. So is this a myth or a fact? Poor mental health is not a big issue for teenagers, and that they just experience mood swings caused by hormonal fluctuations and act out due to a desire for attention. Is that a myth or is that a fact? She's like, could be both. Okay, who else? What did you say? I'm sorry. Did you have something to say? Oh, okay. You want to share over the mic? Okay. Anybody else? It's okay. You can talk loud. I can hear you. Okay, I'm going to relinquish my stand and let her go ahead and teach the segment. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. No, you're absolutely right. So yes, teenagers can sometimes have mood swings. I mean, we're getting older, we're growing up and stuff. That doesn't all necessarily mean that they are struggling with mental health. However, mood swings can be a sign of mental health. So we have to be open to the possibility of those things and not just equate it to, oh, they're just having their mood swings, but also being open to what else are they experiencing. How are these mood swings impacting their relationships and their attitudes towards their peers and towards family members and their teachers and things of that nature. And so one thing that I really have been trying to stress, especially with my female clients, first of all, any of us that know, if you're a female in here, you already know when it comes down to that time of month, and I'm sorry, we got to keep it real in here, that time of month, we just chunk it up to, oh my gosh, they're so emotional. I'm an emotional being during that time of month too. However, one thing that a lot of people don't understand, especially if a teenager has symptoms of like depression, during that time of month, they can actually experience heightened symptoms of depression. Okay, so it's important, and that's actually in the DSM-5, where I can't remember what it's called, but it is literally depression associated with your cycle. Okay, and so I just want to keep that in mind, even for females, if you're raising a teenage daughter or something of that sort, just knowing that those possibilities, they're there. Okay, next one. Let's see. If it's a fact, again, raise your hand. Depression results from a personality weakness or character flaw, and people who are depressed can just snap out of it if they try hard enough. If you think that is a fact, raise your hand. Okay, y'all been paying attention. Well, what do you all think the truth is? What do you all think the truth is? There must be a lot of thinking going on. Okay, listen, we're going to give the mic again.
Test, okay. Depression doesn't necessarily have to stem from like a genetic sort of thing. It can also stem, like I said earlier, from your environmental factors, but there's also the possibility that depression can also stem from just like hormonal imbalances in your brain, and well, that is kind of what depression does, but it's like a naturally occurring hormonal imbalance in your brain, and then you would need like regulation for that or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's not necessarily genetic, but sometimes it can just happen. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can just kind of happen overnight, so.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate you being so interactive today. You're absolutely right. And I think sometimes why, again, sorry, there is a fly. If y'all see me swatting.
Testing.
That's the reason why. But no, absolutely. So depression is not just a personality weakness. And I think a lot of times people can characterize that, especially when you're a teenager growing up, right? It's easy when you see your teenager laying in bed all the time. They're not wanting to take showers. We think some of that is just normal teenage behavior, but some of that isn't normal. And that's why it's important that we do recognize the signs, which we're going to go over a little bit more today, recognizing those signs and not being so quick to just shut it off or shut them down as if this is just who they are, how they are. This is a personality thing, that they just want to be locked up in their room. They don't have any friends. They don't have any motivation. Those are signs of depression. And so I just want parents to be very aware and cognizant of those things, so that we're not just chunking it up as they're lazy and we're not taking their mental health very seriously. Especially if you know that you've had a child that was once really active before, that is a tall tale sign that something might be going on. Okay? I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to move forward in talking a little bit more in depth about some diagnosis. Last one, mental health problems are permanent. Go for it. There's 2 hands now.
Okay, we're going to let her go first.
Okay.
With that, I can say that with mental health, I mean, it can be a yes and a no at the same time, because you don't know what you're dealing with. Yeah.
So yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say depending on the cause, like majority of the time, like mental health issues, like while your mental health can be better, you can't necessarily just like be cured of depression, anxiety, what are some of the other common ones? BPD, other personality disorders, things like that. Like you can't just like cure that. There is no necessary, well, of course, my cure is the Lord. My cure is the
Okay.
Lord. But it's like, there isn't really like a cure for that. So it's like, you just kind of learn to live with it.
Okay. Okay. So I heard yes and no, and then I heard sometimes there are something where it's not curable and you have to learn to adjust and live with. Yes, sir.
My question would be that the word that I've heard dealing with mental illness and depression is the things that trigger them to come on. How does the triggers work?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Not all mental health diagnoses are permanent. And depression doesn't even have to be permanent, nor does anxiety always have to be permanent. It kind of does depend on, again, what is causing the depression, the anxiety, things of that nature. And there are certain diagnoses, even there's like adjustment disorder, and I think I talked about this before, but adjustment disorder is when like you're just going through life transitions and you experience these symptoms for a short period of time. Okay, it's not meant to go with you forever. And so again, depending on how you treat or what your treatment is, mental health diagnoses do not have to be a forever thing. It does not have to be a lifelong sentence. Again, there are chances for recovery, but again, depending on what's, the cause for some of those mental health diagnoses and how you are treating those things, then yeah, they don't have to live with you forever. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that's why I even encourage people that maybe take medications and stuff. I know a lot of times people are like, I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life, and it doesn't always have to be that. It can be for a short period of time to get you through, your treatment, and then afterwards you can work on living without that. So knowing that even medication, again, for certain diagnoses, I want to be very clear, for certain diagnoses, it does not always have to be a lifelong sentence. Now, absolutely, being able to know and recognize what your triggers are is really important because you want to know how to deal with that. If you know that certain environments are triggering for you, then guess what? You're going to work around those triggers and deal with that. Okay? All right, so my next question to you all is, what do you believe are the 5 most common mental health diagnoses in youth? And you can just throw out one. Yes. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Suicidal ideation. Okay, so that can be a symptom of a diagnosis. Okay. What are the top 5 mental health diagnoses that youth get diagnosed with? Depression. Okay. Generalized anxiety disorder. That's 2. Okay, there's 3 more. Bipolar disorder, ooh, okay. Now, bipolar disorder, shockingly, a lot of kids they do not get diagnosed with that. Some people won't diagnose kids with BP or bipolar disorder because of their age. But you can see certain symptoms, and they will classify it as something else but when they turn a certain age where they can receive that diagnosis. Now, some people are okay diagnosing kids with bipolar disorder, but most of the time they try to wait till they become a little bit older before they put that on a kid. So, but yeah, okay. So we got depression, anxiety. Thank you for the answers. Yes. All right. Yep. So, okay. So again, schizophrenia is definitely one of those ones where again they don't really diagnose kids with it at an early age. But you're right, ADHD is definitely on the list. So we have anxiety, depression, ADHD. There's 2 more. Who else wants to take a shot at it? Ooh, Jesus. That's one, but it's not on the list. But you're right, that is definitely one. So I'm going to go down this list, okay? First thing first, the most common ones that you will absolutely see is anxiety disorder. Okay, there are different types of anxiety disorders out there, so I want to be very clear that when people throw out anxiety can look different, and there are different diagnoses under the scope of anxiety. So you can have generalized anxiety disorder, you can have social anxiety, you can have panic disorders, there agoraphobia, there's a lot of diagnoses that fall under anxiety, but the most common ones that you probably experience, especially after COVID, and I know we talked about this, is definitely that social anxiety and just generalized anxiety disorder. So some symptoms that you can watch out for if you do know a child or maybe there is a youth experiencing anxiety. The first thing first is the excessive worrying, okay? Just being uncontrollably worried about a wide range of everyday concerns or specific events, okay? And when I say excessive, they cannot function. It's on their mind 24/7. They're almost obsessing over it. They can't stop the thoughts, the worries from coming. So excessive worrying. There's also irritability. Again, that's really hard for kids because, come on now, teenagers are always irritable. We love y'all, but they're always irritable. But irritability can definitely be a thing, right? So when you notice really quick mood swings or mood changes, especially in response to certain stressors or triggers. Difficulty concentrating, trouble focusing on tasks, making decisions, or retaining information due to preoccupation with worries or fear. Again, if a child is worried or concerned while they're sitting in class, that somebody's looking at them, or maybe the whole class is laughing at them, again, they're not retaining what's being taught to them by their teachers, right? So just difficulty concentrating on things of that nature. Avoidance behaviors, just avoiding certain situations or activities that trigger anxiety, such as social interactions, school, extracurricular activities. Again, it's really important that we catch and be mindful of some of these symptoms, right? If you know your child was really active at one point in time and now they're just overly concerned about being in social settings or really uncomfortable. They don't want to go into the stores with you anymore. They just want to sit in the car. They get super fearful, just, watching out for some of those behaviors. Okay, sleep disturbances, so difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or experiencing restless sleep patterns. The thing about this is, especially for some people that experience anxiety, when you have racing thoughts, and you're trying to go to sleep, and they're up until 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning because they're so worried or concerned about what's going to happen the next day or fears of the future, and they just got that excessive just worrying. That can definitely cause sleep disturbances, even as us as grown-ups. I don't know if you have been there. I've been there, where I just could not shut my mind off. And so, again, that can be a thing when you recognize they're always tired or waking up, and you think they just sitting on their phone all the time, and that might not always be the issue. So definitely making sure that we're asking the right questions. Changes in appetite, perfectionism, so people that are really fearful of either failure or having really high standards about themselves. And so when something doesn't go their way, or they get maybe a C instead of a B, and they are really overly concerned about that, or they're really beating themselves up because they are less than perfect, again, that can create a lot of anxiety for kiddos that may experience that. Panic attacks, sudden episodes of intense fear or discomfort accompanied by physical symptoms such as shortness of breath, chest pain, dizziness, or feelings of loss of control. And a lot of times people think when people are experiencing panic attacks, it's like, you can't be serious. You're being overly dramatic. And that's a real thing for people. For some people have literally went to the hospital thinking they were having a heart attack when it was really a panic attack. Okay, so not minimizing those symptoms when you see or you're experiencing or witnessing even your child, or any youth that may be having troubles with panic attacks. Okay. Also, that might show up in physical symptoms for kids. So they might not be able to really explain it, but a lot of kids that experience anxiety, they talk about feeling nauseous, or having stomach pains, or having headaches. And so those are physical symptoms that can be present as it relates to anxiety. So before I move forward, I just want to leave space before I go to the next one. Does anybody have any questions about anxiety disorder? Yes. Can anxiety be low self-esteem? If you have low self-esteem, it can trigger some symptoms of anxiety, right? Because again, if I'm concerned, if I have low self-esteem and I'm so worried about what other people are thinking of me, and it becomes excessive, it can start to present as anxiety for sure. Yeah. Oh, did you have a question, or are you? Oh, you're managing the floor. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay, absolutely. I appreciate it. Any other questions about anxiety? Yes.
Where is the most high place that teens can get anxiety from?
The most high place they can get anxiety from? Anxiety can stem from a lot of different things. So again, it can be a genetic thing. Most people don't believe that, but it can get passed down, and some of it is learned behavior too, right? If I have a parent or somebody that I know that is really close to me and they exhibit symptoms of fear and panic, sometimes we can put that onto other people, and so sometimes it can be learned behavior, sometimes it can be environmental things. Again, depending on history and experiences, we are really shaped by experiences. And so let's say, we ended up in a car accident one day. That can trigger anxiety. It was a traumatic experience. So trauma alone can create anxiety for a lot of people. So it just kind of depends. Yeah. Anyone else? All right, we're gonna go ahead and go to depression. So depression. So I'll ask you all, what are some symptoms that you may have witnessed that may be a sign or symptom of depression? Isolation. Yeah.
I say like relationships, like toxic like relationships, like
So being in unhealthy relationships, yeah, that can create some depression, absolutely.
At school, bullying.
So bullying,
yeah.
okay. So experiencing bullying,
Shutting down.
shutting down. Okay, you've been listening. Look at y'all. Come on.
I'd say like one of the most common, but like rather like overlooked ones is like lack of hygiene, not only like in their like self as the individual, but also lack of hygiene in their house.
Okay, so lack of hygiene. Listen, I think we talked about that last time, how, most of the time, most kids genuinely do care about what they look like and smell like. Okay? They don't want to be the laughing stock at school. I guarantee you. Okay? And so if you start to notice that they are not bathing or they don't care about their appearances, that may be a telltale sign that they may be experiencing some depressive symptoms. Because again, like I said, most people do care. So thank you for recognizing that. Yes.
I have two. One, not sleeping at night and eating disorder, right?
And what? Okay, so I'll save eating disorders because, yeah, that's a whole nother category. But changes in their eating, absolutely. So whether they're not eating anymore or they're eating excessively. Yes, and you said sleep changes as well, absolutely. Whether that be they're sleeping too little or sleeping too much, because a lot of times people with depression, they feel like they are always tired, they don't have energy, and so they probably sleep a lot more than less. Anyone else?
I would say giving up what was once like something that was very important and like losing that zeal or that desire to eat. Like, for instance, if they were playing sports, no longer having that desire, that could be a sign as well.
Yeah, nope, absolutely. A loss of interest in the things they used to enjoy. So avoidance or substance use, absolutely. So I know we talked a little bit about avoidance and anxiety, but definitely avoidance in other activities, again, that kind of like that withdrawal, that isolation. And yes, sometimes people don't know how to cope with depression, and sometimes they will utilize substances to either give them that boost in their mood or, and so sometimes, and to be honest with you, I know they try not to say, marijuana doesn't have it. No, marijuana does definitely impact anxiety and depression. So whoever is out there saying that it makes you feel better, I can guarantee you there are studies out there where it's really doing the complete opposite. Okay, so, and it's no judgment, but we definitely have to learn how to cope with it instead of utilizing substances as a coping mechanism for it. Okay. Yeah, you all did so amazing. So yeah, so persistent sadness or low mood. So feeling sad, hopeless, or experiencing a low mood most of the time. Okay, and that's some people, I came across clients and they're just like, I just feel like crying. I have no reason, but I just feel like crying. So they're not really able to control how they're feeling that sense of sadness. You all already said it, the loss of interest or pleasure in doing things, changes in that appetite or their weight, sleep disturbances, fatigue or loss of energy, feeling of worthlessness and guilt, whether that's anything. So blaming themselves for something, feeling guilty about the fact that they don't have energy or that they can't enjoy life the way that they want to, difficulty concentrating or making decisions, irritability again, or anger. Sometimes there are anger outbursts because of the depression. Again, some of that withdrawal from friends and family, and then also, and I always want to stress this importance, just because you may experience depression doesn't mean that you're always suicidal. And just because you're suicidal does not always mean that you're depressed. But it can be a result or a symptom of depression. So I'm going to leave it up, open the floor. Any questions specifically about depression?
What is the differences, like well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, since there's like so many like different like levels, I'll put that in like really big air quotes, because I really don't like the high functioning, low functioning thing. But like the high functioning depression, low functioning depression, like things in between. What's up with that?
Yeah. Well, I'll be real with you. We don't ever diagnose with low level or high level. I think that's something that society created. Depression is depression. There are different forms of depression. So some people can experience depression from seasonal things. So it's just seasonal depression. Some people have that. Some people have it's reoccurring. So it doesn't always, it's not constant. Some people experience it in it's there, it goes away, and then it comes back, and then it goes away. And so there's those things. Some depression is just situational, right? If I'm in a very unhealthy, unstable environment, relationship, again, that can create depression. But as soon as I come out of that environment, that experience, whatever, those symptoms may not be there. So there are definitely different forms of how depression may present itself, but depression is depression. Some people are more functioning with their depression. I would say that, where people can kind of function and still go to work and do all those things, but they're still experiencing depressive symptoms. But there's also the ones that really can't, and it's debilitating. So it just kind of depends on how you choose your treatment from that. So, yeah. Any other questions about depression? Anaya wants to ask a question so bad.
What is the meaning of depression?
What is the meaning of depression? Ooh, she just put me on the spot. That was my daughter, y'all. Ciao. So all of these things that we're talking about are mental health, so things that happen within our minds. So depression is a condition of the mind, or genetics, or environmental. So it impacts the way that we think, the way that we act, the way that we see the world. Does that help you? Okay. Yes.
Is self-harm depression or suicide, or could it be both?
So the thing about self-harm is I know a lot of people get fearful when they know somebody that may be self-harming, but self-harming is really just a coping mechanism. Okay, it's an unhealthy one, but it's really just a coping mechanism. And most people that self-harm are usually, you'll mostly hear them either say that, I just wanted to feel something different. And that creates a different feeling for them. Okay, so usually it's just a coping mechanism, and I know most people that experience self-harm, some people automatically think that it's like they're suicidal, and that's not always the case. So I think just being able to really be direct in asking those questions, which I know a lot of people are fearful of doing, because it's like, oh my gosh, as soon as you ask, are you having suicidal thoughts, you think that you're putting something in their head, and that's really not what it is. So just being able to understand the cause and purpose between self-harm and actually having suicidal thoughts. Because if somebody really wants to hurt themselves or follow through with something like that, chances are they probably really know how. And so the self-harm is really just a coping mechanism. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
On the topic of suicide and suicidal thoughts, I did say something about suicidal ideation before. Could you explain the difference between suicidal ideation and then being I guess more actively suicidal?
So yeah, suicidal ideation can stem from simply a thought. Okay, the thing that we like to really do, especially when we're trying to assess for suicide, or if somebody maybe wants to carry out, the thing that we look at is, are you having a thought? do you have a plan in place to carry that thought out? And, thought and intention, and if you have intention to do it, okay? So anytime that somebody, especially I know a lot of people, when they come in, they're like, they're afraid to really talk about having those kind of thoughts because they automatically think, oh, you're going to put me away, and that's not necessarily the case. When you start to become a little bit more serious about some of those thoughts, right, where you want to act upon them, and if you have the means to carry it out, okay? And most of the time, and I think we talked about this before, most of the time you'll see that males have more lethal means of committing suicide versus females that may take a different type of measure, a lesser type of measure, okay? But yeah, it's really about, do you have the thoughts, do you have a plan, do you have an intention and the means to carry that thought out? Okay, and once those things start checking out, then yeah, we got to absolutely get you some help. Okay, and before this is over, definitely we'll leave for anybody, if you are experiencing any of those kind of thoughts or things of that nature, we'll definitely make sure that you have the crisis number so that you can have those resources available if anybody is struggling with that. Because that is a very serious thing, and I know it's some things that makes us uncomfortable when we have to talk about, but they're serious things that are happening, and it's happening in the church as well. And so I don't want to negate the fact that there is a lot of people that do suffer with some sort of thoughts or suicidal thoughts, but sometimes people are like, I'm only here because I don't want to go to hell. And that's not really living either. And so making sure that people have the means and the resources to really to deal with those types of things, okay? Especially with our kids, that's a scary thing to try to come and tell your parents something like that, okay? And it's not easy, and it's something that's really serious. So I hope that we as adults, any adults in this room, can take that serious if somebody is coming with those kind of concerns, and never, again, minimize it. Because sometimes the people think, oh, they're just talking, they don't mean that. And listen, there's kids so young, 8, 9 years old, doing those kind of things, experiencing bullying, and this is their means of, and it's so sad, so we don't ever want to minimize if somebody is sharing that, whether they think, oh, they're just doing it for attention. No. We'll take it serious every single time if we need to. And if you can assess that, if it's right or not, there's other people that can assess if they need some extra additional help. So don't leave that in the hands of yourself. And even for kids that experience friends, sometimes there's teenagers that have friends that come and tell them these things, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, ask somebody. You shouldn't have to carry that weight either. Okay, so don't be afraid to have those conversations with adults and people that you trust so that nobody has to suffer in that type of silence. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, as an adult, if your child does come to you, or even as a grandparent or a caretaker, what do that person do in that situation if a child come to them mentioning that they have those thoughts? How should an adult handle that? How should they address that?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to repeat those questions, really making sure that if they are having those kind of thoughts, that's not the time to sit here and berate them and tell them how much that would hurt you if you were gone, or to guilt them about those kind of thoughts or feelings, okay? And I know that's really scary to be put in that situation, but do you know how many people love you? Why would you ever want to do that? Never ask the question why. Okay? Just let that sink in. Don't ever ask the question why. Okay? But what you do, again, I want to reiterate, ask them, do they have a plan in place? Okay, what is their plan? If they did have those thoughts, do they have a plan? Most people would. Most people would tell you, because if anybody is coming, and I want to really stress this, if anybody is coming to you telling you that they are having suicidal thoughts, chances are it's a cry for help. Anybody that really wants to commit that, they're going to do that without telling anybody. They'll leave you a letter. They'll do whatever they need to do to keep that within themselves, because they know if they come and tell you, you're going to intervene. So most of the time, if somebody's coming to you and telling you that, they don't want to do that. They're asking for help by simply telling you, okay? So yes, if they are coming to you and asking you or telling you about these types of thoughts, then yes, ask them if they have a plan in place. Ask them what's their intentions of carrying out their plan. Do you really see yourself carrying this out? Okay, and what are their means, right? So if you're a parent, grandparent, or whatever, and your child or somebody is telling you that they planned on using a knife, a gun, they were going to possibly use a rope, these kind of things. Once they tell you these things, or medications, that is your job to start making that environment safe. If you now know that your child is experiencing these kind of thoughts, that's my time to lock up the medications, to take away anything that could possibly be utilized as an opportunity, okay? And get them help. If somebody comes to you about having those kind of thoughts, do not allow that to go untreated. Do not feel like it's your job to fix them after this. Go get them some help. Okay? And if you don't know what to do, again, I will leave this number now since we're on the topic. If you are in the state of Arizona, there is a crisis line that you can contact. And there are counselors available at any time for you to talk to. Okay, so while we're on the subject, let's go ahead and place that. Ooh, Jesus. All right, so crisis line. If you are just looking for the national crisis line, you can contact, and I think they made this, hold on, because this is the 1-800 number. Let me give you the shorter version. Okay, instead of it being 911, call 988, okay? It used to be, it'll direct you to the same number that used to be the 1-800 number, but now all you have to do is call 988. That is super easy, super simple, okay? 988. The one for Maricopa, you can contact 602-222-9444, okay? And they can do assessments, they can come out and make sure and give you recommendations if need be. There's also various places that you can go. Mind 24/7 is a place that you can go in person to get assessed as well. So if you're concerned, if you feel like you don't know the right questions to ask, don't be afraid to take them in, and they can do those assessments there for them as well. Okay, then there's the non-crisis warm line. Maybe they just need to talk to somebody, just having a lot of feelings, maybe not so much in a crisis in that moment. The non-crisis warm line for Maricopa is 602-347-1100. I'm sorry? Yeah, the non-crisis warm line. Warm, like warm. It's warm. Yeah, warm line. Okay. Yes. And that number is 602-347-1100. And there are trained professionals, crisis interventionists that can help and assess for those needs as well. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to speed through these a little bit more quickly because time is running. Conduct disorder. These are those disorders where, kids are a little bit more defiant. I know a lot of times people think, oh, they're just being defiant and stuff like that, but there are really diagnoses for these type of behaviors. So this is the third diagnosis that is often diagnosed, and some of those symptoms that you may experience or see is aggression, and so that can be physical aggression towards people or animals, such as starting fights, bullying, using weapons, or being cruel to animals. I will tell you right now, if you have a child that is harming animals, I want you to go get them assessed immediately. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that to scare anybody, but that is a really tall tale sign that something could be going on. And some of those symptoms can present as other things as they get older, like, sociopaths and, psychopaths and things like that. So I'm not saying that to be funny, but like, if you know a child that is harming animals, that is something that you should probably really get checked out. Okay. Destructive behavior. So again, that can be just showing patterns of deliberately destroying property or vandalizing or setting fires. Okay. Yes, we don't want little arsons running around, okay? If you recognize these things are really important that you start putting in interventions, okay? Deceitfulness or theft. So I want to be clear, most kids, they lie. Let's be real. They lie, okay? But if it's like really excessive lying, shoplifting, breaking into homes or cars, or stealing from others, those are common behaviors associated with conduct disorder too. And I know a lot of people are already thinking like, well, that's half my neighborhood, but thinking about those things. Sometimes we think like, oh, there's just not a parental supervision, and that's not always the case. When I worked in the juvenile facility, I was calling parents, hey, I need you to come pick your kid up at 3 o'clock in the morning because they're sitting here at the juvenile facility, and they're like, I didn't even know that they were gone. And it's not always the parents, but sometimes this can literally be, this is a diagnosis. Okay, oppositional defiant disorder, where they're always defiant against authority figures, that's a real thing. Okay, and I'm not just talking about if they just disobey or being disobedient to you. That might be a relational thing. But if you notice that in all adult areas, all authority figures, anybody that has a say in something, and they're very defiant towards that, that can be a thing, okay? And it's important especially to recognize that while they're young, because the older that they get, those consequences are going to get more and more real, okay? So while they're a juvenile, while they are a youth, putting in some interventions as soon as possible, okay? Again, just the violation of rules, a lack of empathy. Okay, they have no regard for other people's feelings. They don't care. They can hurt you and could care less. Okay, academic problems, substance abuse, impulsivity, persistent pattern of behaviors, and difficulty maintaining relationships. Okay, and anytime that kids or anybody for that sort doesn't have relationships, I mean any close-knit relationships, that can just lead to even more behaviors. Okay, so just recognizing those things. Any questions about conduct disorder whatsoever? Okay. And then the last one is eating disorders. Okay, so I know that was mentioned, but it is definitely something that our youth are experiencing more now than ever, especially, and I don't want to throw it all on social media, but thanks to social media. Okay, so they may experience significant weight changes, obsession with food, calories, and dieting, distorted body images, preoccupation with body weight and shape, skipping meals or making excuses to avoid eating, unusual eating habits. So that can be like eating in secret, hiding food, avoiding eating in social situations. Those are things, again, to be mindful of. And I always try to point this out, especially when we're sending our kids to school, because you don't know if they ate or not. Okay, so making sure that they're not storing up like food in their backpacks, or, really asking them, hey, like, what did you eat today? Most kids, they will probably tell you, oh, their food is nasty. And sometimes it is outright nasty. But if they're coming home, ain't ate all day, and they don't come home looking for a snack or a meal, that might be a concern if they're going all day without eating. Okay, if you recognize that they're eating and immediately after dinner, lunch, and they're running to the restroom, and they're spending some significant time in there, watch the behaviors. Okay, some people can just be overly concerned with like working out. Okay, so some people think like, oh, you're working out, that's amazing, that's good. But when it's like excessive, okay, when it comes down to body issues and things of that nature, okay, again, that can create withdrawal from social activities and mood swings and irritability as well. Any questions about eating disorders whatsoever? So you have one or no? Okay. All right. I'm gonna start wrapping this up, y'all. So what would you say are some common misconceptions that we have learned growing up that is still harmful to our youth when it comes down to mental health? Say that again, I'm sorry. The negative things that we say to them. Can you tell me some things that may seem like normal?
They're fat.
Okay.
They're rough,
You're fat.
They're bad.
You're bad.
You're ugly.
You're ugly. Oof. No, that's real though. You're just like your daddy, especially when we know that daddy might not be the greatest person.
Right.
That is very harmful. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Not allowing, I guess, children to express themselves.
Not allowing kids to express themselves. And most of the time, the reason why is because you haven't learned how to communicate. And if you don't know how to communicate, kids expressing themselves feel like you're being disrespectful. God forbid that our kids have feelings and emotions. And because that makes you uncomfortable, thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? So what are some common misconceptions that we have learned growing up that are still impacting our kids today when it comes down to their mental health, things that are detrimental? Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of, and I hear this in different aspects, like ministry, in our family. A lot of people feel like because they had to go through it, their child has to go through it.
Yeah.
Like, I had to figure it out for myself, so you got to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
As opposed to actually being an assistance to them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And what does that do? That just recreates trauma, recreate abuse, recreate just a whole lot of things. So absolutely, that idea that if I had to go through it, you got to go through it. And that is really, or even invalidating your kid's experience because it's not as bad as yours. I'll let that sit in. Yes. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh. When you were speaking last week, you spoke about the internet. Mm-hmm. And what the internet, from my perspective, has grown our children up faster. Mm-hmm. So sometimes parents, I was going to say we say that's a grown-up conversation, and then just push it to a side like that.
Yes, that's a grown-up conversation. Can I tell you that your kids are a lot smarter than what you think? If you don't think that your kids are nosy and don't know what's going on in the house, and it's so sad because, and I've seen it before, where parents will exclude their kids out of like big decision making. Okay, and then just expect them to be okay with transitions, divorce, and all of these different things. And those things impact kids. Those things are traumatic too. And so the scary thing about, oh my goodness, the scary thing about that is sometimes we can create trauma from our trauma. And so what trauma are you imposing onto your kids by not even allowing them to be a part of the process? Having a say, having a voice, and minimizing their experiences. Yeah, that's a grown-up conversation, but I promise they having grown-up conversations every day at school. And so if you're not learning to teach them, I promise they're gonna learn from somebody else. Yeah, thank you.
It kind of ties in with my last point I just said, but like what happens in the house stays in the house, or gaslighting.
Mighty Father, when I tell you, that has been, and I don't know, I knew I grew up with that. Okay, what happens in this house stays in this house, and that is something that is so harmful to our children, to generations to come. Because as soon as we tell our kids what happens in this house stays in this house, you are literally teaching them how to be quiet and how to not stand up for themselves, teaching them how to not advocate for themselves, teaching them that abuse is okay, teaching them that there is so many things that are okay, and that's not okay. And then when we can't talk about it, we just grow up to be adults dealing with the same issues. And then learning how to navigate life as a grown-up when this could have all been dealt with. And then we're creating, again, generational cycles of trauma. What happens in this house doesn't stay in this house. Because as long as I'm being hurt or harmed or any of those things, absolutely not. Yeah. Sorry, was there somebody else? Okay.
Comparison.
Okay.
Or like, I forget which lady said it, kind of saying like, oh, like your kid's bad, or like kind of comparing it to like the aunt's kid, and like, oh, I want them to be like your kid. They're so well behaved and good. They do good in school, like things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you to know, kids, especially at those really important developmental stages, they are so fragile. Their emotions are so fragile. And if we are not careful, we are literally teaching them how to view themselves. These are the relationships that they're learning to form with themselves. And so you comparing them to other people, guess what they're going to start doing as they get older? I'm going to start comparing myself to other people in the room to make sure either am I fitting in or not. And that's so unfair. So really, yes, I don't think we recognize it, but our teens, our kids, their emotions are so fragile. And what you speak to them, words do hurt, and they do carry weight, especially when it's coming from somebody that they love, honor, and respect. When all they're looking, and I will tell you, a lot of times kids are just looking for parents' approval. And the more that you reject them, the more that you push them away, the more that you speak these ill things into them, guess what? That's how they're learning to form a relationship. Then when you find that they're in these abusive and toxic, unhealthy relationships, where did it start from? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this up. I really do appreciate each and every one of you all's comments, your questions, everything. And at any point in time, again, if you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that is having a challenging time, don't ever hesitate to reach out and seek help, okay? We are not meant to do this thing alone. There are really trained professionals that can help and assist with your kids. You don't have to be the only one to help them. Okay, so don't be afraid of those things. Recognize the signs, recognize the symptoms, learn and teach yourself about your own kids, learn and teach yourself about their friends and their families, learn what's out there on the internet, okay? Don't be afraid to get on some of these sites, okay? Do your homework, okay? I appreciate you all. Is there anything else? Anything else in the room? Okay. All right. Thank you.
We thank Lady Jazz for coming and sharing. And this is her profession. This is what she makes her living with. But she's come here tonight to share with you in the name of Christ. And one of the things I want to say is thank you. Thank you. And we lean on here at Life Changers Global Ministries, as our pastor has says, we're doing Kingdom Institute. So what we're trying to say is let's pay attention to some things that generations have overlooked. We just said, go over there and sit down and shut up. Well, this is not a generation that goes over there and sit down and shuts up. And so we thank God for Lady Jazz coming and sharing with us, and we are going to be leaning on you. I have a topic, and I haven't cleared it with her, so I won't say, but we're going to be asking her back before the summer starts with our youth going into the summertime. We thank God for you tuning in again tonight. We thank God for FIC coming out to support their First Lady. And so we're going to ask you to tune in next week. For the month of March, we are turning the classes, the whole month of March, over to our own, I don't want to say missionary, but our own sister Barge. She's going to handle this for me, because what we're going to try to do is expand this out to be more inclusive with our women's department, our young girls department, and meet the needs of the kingdom from a woman's standpoint of view with our Bible studies. So our own Sister Barge is going to be coming in and doing that. We want to be inclusive and reach out and meet the needs of the entire kingdom of God. The Bible studies we've done for years, and we've done all the lessons, and so when I go reading a scripture, but how does that fit into day-to-day life? How does it really fit in? Because one of the things that happens from my perspective, this is just Pastor Fred's perspective, we come up here and we think everybody is supposed to be perfect because they go to church. They're supposed to be perfect because they said, I'm saved. They're supposed to be perfect and not do anything wrong. And then the minute somebody does, we start labeling them and say, oh, you're a hypocrite, you're that. Well, praise God. We have a lot of growing to do. We have a lot of growing to do. And so that's what our pastor wants us to do, is being more meaningful to living conditions today. I can tell you what Daniel did in the lion's den. But then somebody's going to say, I'm not going in a lion's den. You know, but we thank God. So that's why we're kind of expanding and doing these things, because I want to leave you with this, with Lady Jazz. Our children are our most important and greatest asset. They're not just to be given a tablet and say, keep yourself busy with this, but they need attention. And Lady Jazz said last week, and I'm going to reiterate and shut up. Know your children's friends. Know your children's friend. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Our pastor asks each week that you, those of you that will and those of you that can, make a donation to our Kingdom Life Institute of $20 each week. And if you can, the different ways for giving are on the screen. And if you can be a financial support, we would really appreciate it. And so until this time next Monday night, may God bless you and may God keep you.